can you tell me who you are, where are we right now, and how did you get here?
I'm Alex Priadko. I'm 79 years old and I'm living here in our apartment at Tonsley. And Xavier, this is my life. I was born in Kiel in Germany in 1944, where my brother and my mother and father and brother and I were held, and we survived until the end of the war. I also had another brother, Volodya, who was 17 years older than me, and he was held in the naval shipyards in Hamburg, where he was required to work. And sadly, he died as a result of an accident in those naval shipyards. At the end of the war, a German official in the camp where we were living in Kiel changed our papers of identification from a Ukrainian origin to Polish origin. And this was an important initiative by this particular official, because it prevented the Russian authorities from taking possession of my family and the possibility of returning them to Russia or Ukraine. And I'm sure, well, I suspect that if that happened, my parents would have been killed by the Russian authorities. So with these change of identity papers, we were able to travel from Germany to Naples and there board a ship to travel to Australia in the program of relocating displaced persons into Australia. When we first came to Australia in 1949, I started school at a little school, public school called Sharpen Primary School in New South Wales. So Zave, this is Parkside Primary School. When Mum and my brother and I drove from Adelaide, from New South Wales, Sharpen to Adelaide in 1956, Mum and I lived in a boarding house in Wakefield Street in the city, and my brother Mike went to Anguston to work in the cement works at Anguston. So I used to catch the tram from Wakefield Street to Parkside Primary School. The tram would stop on Goodwood Road. I'd get off, cross over Goodwood Road and walk down to the Parkside Primary School, and yeah, that's where I did all my primary schooling. And I would be always grateful to a teacher called Mr. Felgenhauer, because it was he who encouraged me to go on to Unley High School instead of Norwood Technical College. Only high school to get a higher standard of education, because obviously he thought I was capable of better learning. So he was a pretty influential person in me being able to progress from Parkside Primary to Unley High School and then work on beyond that. I came here to Unley High School and went through to matriculation year, or the equivalent of year 12 now. And then from there I started working at FH Fauldings. I'm trying to remember the years. I'll have to have another look at the history of it and see if I can remember the years. But I've only ever been caned once at school for not behaving properly, and this is it, Unley High School. I can't remember what year it was. Might have been year 2, year 3 of high school. And I must have misbehaved in the classroom, and the teacher thought it was bad enough to send me out, and I went to the vice principal office, Mr. Giles, Pinhead Giles we used to call him, and he thought I misbehaved badly enough to warrant caning, so I got my hands caned with a cane. And that's the only time I'd ever been caned at school, Zave. The one and only time I misbehaved badly enough to be caned.
So this is the old building of the South Australian Institute of Technology. While I was working at Fauldings, this is where I came to study part-time for the Certificate of Analytical Chemistry. And at the same time, Pam also came in and studied for the same certificate.
Yes, so when I left school at 16 in 1962, I got a job at Arnott's Biscuits in the laboratory, and part of it was to study analytical chemistry. So I started here at the same time. In the class there were only 2 girls and there were 33 boys actually. So I was as interested in the boys as I was in the chemistry. So I started sussing out who was in the class. I remember, first of all, noticing this name, A. Priadko, that was always on the top of the list of in the marks, you know, the tests and everything. He always got high distinctions. So that was the first time I sort of noticed the name. And then Trevor Douglas, who lived near me, had a car, and so he offered to drive me home from lectures, and then often Alex would come as well in the car. So I sort of noticed him then, but Trevor was a pretty dominant personality, so he sort of overshadowed Alex a bit.
Yeah, so after a while I bought my own car, and then I was able to ask often Pam a lift home to her place where she was living down in Manila. So that then began a courting relationship, if you like. So I started to ask Pam about looking at making arnotts.
My first day was to the movies, to a soccer match. Now, I'd never been to a soccer match, but I went to a soccer match and then to the movies. And as we started going out, he started to grow on me. I started to realise how he was polite, he was respectful, he really liked me, and I think that really helped. And so our romance grew from there to a point where we became engaged and then we got married.
So Dave, there we are. That's 13 Grandview Grove Stir. That's the very first house that Gran and I had when we were married. So we were married on the 13th of May 1967, and this was our house that we'd bought just before we were married. So we moved in here and we lived here for 52 years. When we sold the house in, when did we sell it? I think it was 2018, November 2018, we sold the house and moved away to rent at South Brighton before we moved into the apartment in which we now live. So that's where your dad grew up. Anita, Nicky and Julia all grew up there in the 52 years that we lived there.
Pam and I were married on the 13th of May 1967. And we had subsequently 3 children in a row. Mark was born on the 13th of February 1968. Anita was born on the 14th of June 1969. And Nicole was born on the 30th of September 1970. Our 4th child and daughter, Julia, was born on the 11th of February 1976. And she was baptised in the St Anne's Chapel of the St Anne's parish. When I finished high school, my first full-time job was with a pharmaceutical company called FH Fording, and there I was employed as part of their cadetship program, which meant that I worked full-time, but I was also given some time off during the daytime to go to the South Australian Institute of Technology and study on a part-time basis a certificate of analytical chemistry. Sometimes the lectures did go after hours and didn't finish on some occasions until around about 9 p.m. So I had a busy program of working full-time and studying part-time to get this certificate of analytical chemistry qualification. In 1967, I resigned from working with FH Fording, but continued to study the certificate of analytical chemistry. But then I started working with Celtics Oil Company at their Birkenhead terminal, where I worked as a laboratory assistant in their petroleum products quality control laboratory. But the reason for me choosing to work with Celtics Oil Company was that they offered me an opportunity of studying on a part-time basis at the University of Adelaide for a Bachelor of Applied Science degree, which was a higher qualification than a Certificate of Analytical Chemistry. So that was the reason behind me making that decision. So at the beginning, I was studying the analytical chemistry until I qualified for that, and studied at the same time for the Bachelor of Applied Science degree at the university, which I gained in 1972. And it was not long after I gained my qualification that I resigned from Celtics Oil Company and began working with a company called Petroleum. In 1972, I resigned from Celtics and began working with a company called Petroleum as a technical sales representative, which meant selling water treatment products to industries. After working there for 2 years, I realised that I was not cut out to be a sales representative. So I resigned from Petroleum and was able to gain employment with Bridgestone, the rubber manufacturing people that used to be located on South Road at Edwardstown. And there I worked as a quality control officer. So it was in a quality control laboratory of the Bridgestone company. I was responsible for a small staff of people involved in testing of rubber products. So this was my first experience of actually being engaged in a supervisory role, a responsible role, and being responsible for a small staff and their conduct and performance in the laboratory quality control. While I was working with Bridgestone, I realised that I was searching for a more fulfilling job role. I was enjoying the responsibility of being responsible for a small staff, but I was looking for a greater challenge and, of course, a more financially rewarding one. I noticed in the paper an advertisement with Arnott Biscuits for the position of a production manager. In 1976, I applied for this position, and I was successful and gained employment then with Arnott Biscuits. So then in October 1976, I resigned from Bridgestone and began employment with Arnott Biscuits as a trainee production manager at their production or manufacturing facility at Galway Avenue at Marston. The first stage of my employment with Arnott Biscuits meant that Pam and I and our family had to move to Melbourne for a period of 3 months, where I worked with one of the factories at Port Melbourne, an Arnott Brockhoff guest factory at Port Melbourne, where I worked on the ground floor of manufacturing biscuits to learn the skills of biscuit manufacturing and all the complexities associated with that technology. On the completion of that 3 months of training at the Arnott Brockhoff guest factory, we returned to Adelaide, where I continued working as a trainee production manager until the factory manager was satisfied that I had gained sufficient skills and knowledge to be able to take on the responsible role of being production manager for Arnott Biscuits within the Marston factory. After a few years in my role as production manager, the factory manager, who was my direct boss, retired, and I was promoted into the position of factory manager for the Marston site. I was working in that role for a couple of years when I had a strong disagreement with the general manager of the site, and my position was moved from being factory manager to the position of a created position of technical projects manager. In this role, I was looking for opportunities within the production environment for manufacturing efficiencies and implementation of new technologies and recipe modifications, a role that actually I quite enjoyed. I was pleased in some respects to be free of the responsibility of a high managerial position. But it was during this time that I subsequently became involved in specialising in the manufacturing of chocolate. And this provided me with an opportunity of going to France and Belgium to study the skills and techniques of chocolate manufacturing within the manufacturing and factories of those two countries, an experience that I thoroughly enjoyed. This also then led me to going to Switzerland to work with a chocolate manufacturing company called Bühler in the town called Utzwil in Switzerland, to look at the latest technology that was available in the manufacture of chocolate, and to conduct trials with our raw materials to explore the benefits that could be gained in the use of this new and modern Bühler technology. Following these trials, and when I'd returned back to our factory at Marston, I developed a project which involved purchasing the latest technology in chocolate manufacturing and bringing that technology into the Marston facility, which was ultimately accepted by the company management, and the project that I had developed was implemented within the Marston chocolate manufacturing facility and still continues at this day. I've been working with Arnott's Biscuits for 24 years when I came to the realisation that I was becoming dissatisfied with my role in the company and the work that I was doing, and I was becoming very dissatisfied with the direction that the management was taking. So I chose to take an early retirement package, which meant that after 24 years, in November 2000, I finished working with Arnott's Biscuits. But I still had a lot of work energy within me, and there were things that I wanted to do. So the first step was I gained a license for driving limousines, and I drove limousines then for 5 years, doing winery tours, school formals, funerals, weddings, and I had a lot of fun with it. That went on for 5 years, and there were a lot of great experiences within that. But there was one particular humorous and yet on the other side of it scary experience that I had with a limousine. One evening, I decided that I felt like smoking a little cigar after dinner. So I went to a service station on South Road, parked the limousine, and went into the service station to buy my little cigar. When I came out, the limousine wasn't where I parked it. When I looked down to the drive, I noticed the limousine parked up against an ambulance. And when I spoke to the ambulance drivers, they said that they had noticed the limousine rolling out from the service station across South Road, bumping against the median strip, rolling back across to the drive of the service station, bumping into the surrounds of a gas storage facility, and began rolling out onto South Road again when the ambulance drivers decided to drive up and place the ambulance in a position that stopped the limousine from rolling back out onto South Road. That was a scary part of it, because I was extremely fortunate. At that time, there were no other cars driving on that section of South Road between changes of traffic lights further down on South Road. Anyhow, I rang my boss and explained to him what had happened, and he took it in good grace. There were no repercussions out of it, and it was an incident I will always remember, both humorous and a bit scary. After 5 years of driving limousines, I decided it was time for another change. So I finished with that and started doing house plans for real estate agents. This was a job that was made by appointment for me by another company, which involved going to a house that was going to be put on the market, roughly drawing up, but accurately, drawing up the plans of the house and emailing those plans to the company that engaged me to draw them up properly on their CAD-CAM as a plan that they would send them to the real estate agent, and that would be used in their advertising materials for the sale of a house. I did this for a couple of years and quite enjoyed the moving around and the experience of doing house plans of homes and travelling around the city. I then just started doing some work on stock taking. There's a company called RGIS Lowton, and they engage people to go into stores and stock take, and they offered me the opportunity of doing stock taking of John Deere equipment. And this meant driving to John Deere agencies throughout the state to stock take all their farm manufacturing equipment within an agency. So for example, I'd fly over to Port Lincoln, pick up a hire car and drive to an agency, a John Deere agency in Port Lincoln, take stock of their equipment, then drive to Cummins and take stock of their equipment, drive to Sejourner, take stock of their equipment, and so on. So it gave me a great opportunity of travelling around the state and to places like Sejourner, the Riverland, down the southeast, to across to Tasmania on one occasion, and just experiencing the country through the various seasons that the farmers experienced and used all the farming equipment. During this time, I also had an opportunity of doing some biscuit consulting work, which involved, in the first instance, going to the Solomon Islands for a couple of weeks with a biscuit manufacturing company there to develop a product that they wanted to put onto their market amongst the island countries that was similar to a hard cracker, like a Sayo type of biscuit. And this went on for 2 weeks. When I completed that, I had the opportunity of doing some biscuit and consulting work in Fiji. And this was an experience I thoroughly enjoyed, and it lasted for a year. And every month I would fly over to Fiji to a biscuit company in Suva. I would work with the company for a week, come home for 3 weeks, and then return again in a month's at that time for another week of work. And this went on for 12 months. And it was a delightful experience because I loved the work that I was engaged in, and that was product development work, efficiency work, product improvement work, the sort of work that I relished doing at Arnott's and got a great deal of delight out of. And I was able to make a significant contribution to the operations of that facility.
So in 2006, I was working in the naturopathic clinic, and I'd been there for about 10 years. And a friend rang me to say that there was a job at Brighton as a pastoral associate. This really appealed to me because I was looking forward to meeting, working more with people than I was in the clinic. It was just patients all the time. So I really looked forward to that job, and I took the job at Brighton as a pastoral associate. I studied for a Bachelor of Ministry in that time, and I helped families prepare for baptisms, for funerals, all the other sacraments and all the other life things that people need someone to listen to them and help within their daily lives. And that I really, really loved that job. In 2011, I retired from the job as pastoral associate, and it was very, very full on, and I was needing a little bit of a break. So I continued to work then in the Adelaide Archdiocese with a number of roles. One was helping Jill Gallio, who supported pastoral associates throughout Adelaide. I did quite a bit of bereavement training with people for bereavement groups. And Jill and I ran a program called Seasons for Growth, which is a program for grief and loss program for people. And we did that for about the next 10 years.
Well, here we are now. I retired from full-time work in November 2000. Gee, that's all those years ago, 24 years ago nearly. And what a journey it's been since then. We've done lots of different things. We've done a lot of overseas travel. I've done lots of different jobs, and here we are, looking back over the journey that we've been on and reflecting on all the things that we've done, we've achieved, where we've been, renewed a lot of new friendships, it's been a fabulous journey.
So we're a good team, very good team. We've worked together, very different personalities. We do things very differently, we think differently. But whenever we've had difficulties, we've always managed to find our way through and work together and sort it out, because the most important thing has always been our relationship with one another.
And that is so. When I made the tough decisions about work, Dave, there were some difficult times that we went through, but Pam supported me all the way through that journey. She stuck with me. We ventured through all the different things that we did, and she supported me in all the areas that we worked through, even though sometimes she might not have agreed with what I was doing. But Pam was always there to back me up and work through the challenges that we'd faced.
Yeah, and I think always that the main focus was us and our relationship. So here we are, 57 years, and we're still together.
And we're still together, and we're still going strong.
And we can still laugh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And enjoying the fruits of our labours, Dave. Enjoying our children, enjoying our grandchildren, and enjoying all the little benefits that we've been able to achieve through our journey together over these 57 years.